It's Wednesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Hope you guys are having a great day out there today. Hope you're having a better day than the Timberwolves. They weren't very good Tuesday night, and we'll get to that in a minute. Opener against the Lakers fell flat. Plenty to say about that. The Wild, on the other hand, continue their excellent early season play. I'll have more on that at the end of the show. Chip Scoggins joins me here in a little bit to talk about a Division III running back who came from Texas, played six-man football in Texas. I hadn't really heard much about six-man football, but Chip will educate us about six-man football and how this player made the transition from six-man football in high school to the full 11-man college version in the MIAC. So that'll be in a little bit. Randy Johnson joins me as well to go for football. They are coming off a bye week. Huge game against Maryland this weekend. If this season is going to be anything close to a success, they pretty much need to win this one. They've won 2 in a row, beaten USC and UCLA. The USC win was really good at the time. Doesn't look quite as impressive as it was because USC keeps losing, including a loss to Maryland last weekend while the Gophers have a bye. So we'll get into everything that entails with the Gophers and what needs to happen on Saturday for them to extend this to a 3-game winning streak. First, though, what did I miss? Like I said, we're going to start Wolves season opener on Tuesday at the Lakers. I'm willing to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt early in this season, just because you had the Karl-Anthony Towns trade like less than a month ago, shaking things up. It was a long play and a medium-term play. In the short term, I think it's going to be a little bit ugly with the starting lineup with Julius Randle in instead of Karl-Anthony Towns. They are stylistically different. Even if statistically they get to the same place a lot of times. Randle more of a bruiser. He can shoot, but that's not really his number one thing. He'll get you down by the basket. He'll score on you. He will do more of the power forward, kind of traditional power forward things while also stretching the floor, passing pretty well. But he looked like a guy who hasn't played since late January, which, oh, by the way, he was. Remember, his season in New York ended early last year. Played a game in the preseason, but that doesn't really count. Like he's back on a regular season NBA court for the first time in 9 months with a brand new team he just got traded to 3 weeks ago. So I'm going to give Julius Randle a little bit of a pass. And he wasn't even the biggest problem that I saw on the court. So we're going to grade a few of the Wolves players. And the worst by far, I've not seen Mike Conley Jr. play this bad in a Wolves uniform. He was a big reason they lost 110-103 on Tuesday night. His first half in particular, he didn't take a shot. Had a bunch of turnovers, a bunch of weird, kind of lazy, sloppy turnovers. I don't know if he was sick or what was up with Mike Conley Jr., but he did not look like the crisp kind of floor general that we have come to expect in the last couple of years with the Wolves. That was not the Mike Conley Jr. that we've seen. And you worry a little bit that time is catching up with him. But again, we'll give him a little bit more time to get going. I don't think that is representative of what we're going to see from him over the long haul. But he was a minus 21 during a brutal first half. The Wolves are actually lucky to only be down by 13 at the end of the first half. Made it a bit of a game in the second half. I think they got it to within like 3 early in the fourth quarter. It never really felt like a big-time run, though. It felt like they inched closer. They started playing better, but LA kind of had it on cruise control, or at least had it in a comfortable spot for most of that fourth quarter. So Conley was bad. Jaden McDaniels, 5 fouls. Like, the youth is no longer an excuse for anybody who was on the court for the Wolves on Tuesday night. Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards both now in their 5th NBA seasons. Jaden McDaniels only played 18 minutes because of those 5 fouls. He was okay when he was on the court, but he's got to stop fouling. Like, just cannot do that. He didn't make any of his three-pointers. He was a minus 8 in 16 minutes. So I'm going to say he was the second worst Wolf on the court, of consequence at least. I don't know why they're not playing guys a little more. Anthony Edwards plays 41 minutes on a deep team. Anthony Edwards still playing 41 minutes. let's get Josh Minot off the bench. Let's get some of these rookies out there. Let's see a little bit more. Let's get some energy out there. So I did not think it was Chris Finch's best game either in terms of rotations, in terms of how you're divvying up minutes. He gave Joe Ingles the 9th man spot, although he only played 7 minutes. This is the regular season. I get it. It's the opener. Everybody's fresh. I get it. You're trying to come back, so I get Ant's minutes might pile up, but this cannot become a trend. So player-wise, though, Conley and McDaniels were by far the most troubling first impressions. Guys who were kind of as expected. I would say Ant was kind of as expected. He needed 25 shots to get his 27 points, but he at least brought energy. He was good in the first half, not as good in the second half. Gobert was kind of about what you would expect, 13 points, 14 rebounds, although Anthony Davis seemed particularly motivated against him whenever he was matched up against him. Probably still upset that he didn't win Defensive Player of the Year last year, that Gobert got it. So there were some factors. There's some schedule loss kind of factors that played into this game that I just should note. You had the Lakers, their home opener, a motivated Anthony Davis, a revamped roster, and oh, by the way, LeBron James playing with his son, Bronny, making NBA history. Kind of a sham. I'm sorry. Kind of a sham. A cool moment, but man, Bronny looks completely overmatched on an NBA court. Probably does not belong out there. Would not be on an NBA roster if not for his dad. So there's that element to it. It diminishes from the moment. Royce wrote about that, and I think he's absolutely right. This is not like Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. playing together when Griffey Jr. was taking the world by storm and Ken Griffey Sr. could still play at the end of his career. This is not that. This is a legend making something happen for his son. So I get it. It was a nice moment, but I don't think we're going to see too many of those moments going forward, or at least we shouldn't, because Bronny was a -5 in his 3 minutes. It kind of let the Wolves back into the game towards the end of the second quarter. Who else for the Wolves? I thought, Ant was about as expected. Randle kind of as expected. His numbers ended up being better than his than the eye test. He wound up with 16 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists in 34 minutes. He didn't look completely out of place. It just looked like it's going to take a while to fit in around him. But he was actually a +2. He was the only starter that was a plus in the box score. So at least he had that going for him. So I'd say he was pretty close to what you would expect from him. Naz Reid was pretty much what you would expect from him. Dante DiVincenzo had good effort. His shooting wasn't great, just 2 for 8 from 3. He'll make more shots going forward. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was about the only guy who was consistently excellent last night in his 28 minutes. He was a +13, 14 points, 5 rebounds, had to handle the ball a decent amount because Conley was just not good. So that's kind of the grading, and Ingles was fine. He gave him 7 kind of, steadying minutes to kind of get them back in the game. I don't think he's going to play a ton this season. I don't think we have to worry too much about that, but just kind of looking at it as a whole, it was a little bit clunky, as they say. The ball stopped a little bit too much. They didn't quite seem sure of where they were supposed to be. The energy was bad, which is weird for an opener. You just kind of got the sense this is a team still feeling its way out. That's going to take a little time to get itself together. Remember last year they came out of the gates overall strong, but I think they lost 2 of their first 3 last year. They didn't look great coming out of the gates, and then they kind of figured it out, got their energy, got settled in, got their rotations figured out, ended up winning 56 games. I think this is still a 50 to 55 win team, and maybe more if they kind of find their gear, use their depth to their advantage, but some troubling developments. We'll just say that troubling developments in the first of 82. Not going to get too worked up about it. It's just one NBA game, not a good one. If this stretches into 10, 20 games, then you can start to be a little bit more concerned. This is one. If they look better next time out, we will have a much better understanding of kind of what this team could be when they're at their peak and not closer to the floor, which they were on their opener Tuesday night. Let's talk Gopher football today with Randy Johnson from the Star Tribune. Randy, the Gophers had a bye week last week, which kind of let them maybe reset, feeling good after 2 straight wins that kind of turned their season in the right direction. How do you imagine they spent this time, aside from resting, recovering, things of that nature?
Yeah, the big thing that Coach PJ Fleck was happy about the bye was get the time to heal up. They had some bumps and bruises and everything, but they also did a lot of self-scouting, trying to figure out how they can take some of those weaknesses they have at times. Say run defense not as good as they'd like it to be sometimes. The running game, getting the special teams, getting that taken care of, where it's a little bit sharper than they've had so far this year. Just trying to correct some things and be able to hit the ground running here come Saturday against Maryland.
Which feels like a big game. They all are. I mean, there's only so many opportunities, even in the Big Ten with 9 conference games. But you look at your most recent power rankings. You got Maryland below the Gophers. You got USC kind of falling. That's a team that Maryland just beat. These feels like kind of similar teams in their kind of arc of the season, and it feels like a game that will have a lot of implications in terms of how we think of this season by the time it ends.
Yeah, I think so. I think the Terrapins are right there, the similar record and everything with the Gophers. The games at the time of the season were both needed for to stay in a good shape in making a bowl game. The Gophers need 2 wins to become bowl eligible, and I'm sure they're thinking they want to do more than just get eligible. They want to string together many wins as they can here to improve their lot in life. Against Maryland, it's going to be an interesting game because this will be the first team they've seen in a while that that relies on the passing game as much as Maryland does. Their quarterback averages 300 yards a game, Billy Edwards Jr., and then they have the Big Ten's top receiver in Ty Felton, who already has 64 catches this year. So they're going to have to be sharp in pass rush and obviously in coverage.
You feel like they can do that? I mean, it does feel like that plays at least to some of their strengths, at least as we've seen them so far this season.
Yeah, they have a nice pass defense. So far, they've been ranked near the top in the country. Part of that has to do with the fact that other teams have run the ball successfully against them, so they haven't been facing a pass happy team quite as often. USC was one of those that. Lincoln Riley can't help himself. Sometimes he would pass the ball when maybe he should have run it. But it's gonna be interesting to see what they can do turnover wise too. If they can get some takeaways, they've been very good at that this year among the better teams in the country. But PJ Fleck was basically emphasizing that's in their losses this year. They've needed to do more in the takeaway department, and that's something that if they can. Get another one per game that set them up pretty well.
What do we make overall of the Big Ten? I was just looking at your power rankings before we started recording, and it's probably take you longer than they used to, right? You got to rank 18 teams. Back when we started doing this, it was maybe was it 12 when you started doing this, or was it 14 by the time?
It was 14, yes. Okay. It was since 2014 was when Rutgers and Maryland came in, But now with the 4 Western teams, it's what I've noticed that obviously right now you got a team at the top in Oregon. You also have Penn State that's undefeated, and Indiana that's undefeated, and Ohio State and Illinois with 1 loss there. That all those teams are alive for to get into the 12-team college football playoff. Some. Their routes there are more realistic than others. Indiana's a really interesting team this year with their breakthrough season under Coach Kurt, first-year Coach Kurt Signetti. What they've done, they just got done beating Nebraska 56-7. They lost their quarterback to a thumb injury. Curtis Rourke, transfer from Ohio U. He basically had surgery on his thumb on Sunday. He's listed as out indefinitely. He'll definitely miss this week, and they hope to have him back next week. So whatever they did, I guess they were optimistic that the surgery took care of it, where he could come back somewhat soon. This week, big game, Illinois at Oregon. That's kind of could be say an elimination game of sorts for Illinois if they would fall. Might make that pretty tough for them to make the playoff, but. The interesting thing will be to see if the Big Ten, if things shake out where they get 4 teams in the playoff. They'll probably get 3 for sure. There's a chance, say, if things fall right for Indiana, they could make it too.
Speaking of Indiana, just kind of those sneaky teams, and you said Illinois Is Illinois that good? How do we kind of figure that? Because the Gophers have to play them later this season.
Yeah, they have them next week in Champaign. They're solid. They just got done beating Michigan 21-7, shutting down the Wolverines.
Michigan can't throw the ball. What are they? Quarterback?
They have their offense is very one-dimensional right now. So, and that's another one that got away from the Gophers. That had certain things gone a little bit different there in Ann Arbor. They'd be sitting there with a little brown jug and another win. But Michigan, they're falling back to earth pretty quickly after winning the national title last year.
But Illinois, we think we're probably going to learn more about them this weekend, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they can do out at Oregon. That's another one to look at too. Is Washington is at Indiana. I think Indiana should be able to take care of business at home, but with a backup quarterback, it's going to be a little bit dicey, I imagine.
The Gophers. So if you look at it, the Gophers still have Illinois, Penn State, and
they go to Rutgers after Illinois.
And then Wisconsin.
They finish up with Penn State at home, Wisconsin on the road. So there, you get 2 wins there. You're bowl eligible. You get 3. You're sitting at 7-5, and looking at probably a little bit better bowl. And somehow if they would win 4 games, then you'd be you could get to a place like say a Nashville or a Charlotte for the Duke's Mayo Bowl, things like that. It kind of looks right now that teams like Indiana, if they don't make the playoff, Illinois, they could be in line for the Florida Bowls, the Citrus and the ReliaQuest in Tampa.
Just looking at the bottom of the Big Ten, Randy, Purdue just lost 35-0 to Oregon. They're already 0-4 in the Big Ten. They still have to play Ohio State, Penn State, and this resurgent Indiana team. That doesn't seem like it's a very fun time in West Lafayette. Yeah,
that's a tough one. And the funny thing is, a week before, they put up 49 points, but lost 50-49 in overtime against Illinois. So they're they had that one little breakout game, but then they've come back to earth. They've had a lot of offensive issues, and now they really can't stop anything on defense.
Looking at all this, maybe we can finish up here. Like looking at all this, it only reinforces to me that this is one of the more pivotal games on the Gopher schedule. I think they should beat Rutgers. Rutgers is not very good right now. They've kind of fallen back after a nice non-conference season. You've got other opportunities on the schedule, but Wisconsin's ascending. Illinois looks like it's ascending. Like you kind of got to have this one if you want at least a realistic chance at least a 7-win season.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, you're going to have really tough math to get to 7 without this one. I would say that there's a lot of similar teams to the Gophers right now. I think Maryland's one of them. Rutgers, that's on the road, so that's not going to be the easiest in the world. I mean, they're not playing very well right now, especially in offense. They do have a nice running game, so they can shorten games that way with Kyle Monangai. You look at Wisconsin playing much better on defense. We'll see how they'll be at the end of the season. I would say that should be a game where the Gophers have a chance. And I'm not going to rule out beating Penn State at home here. Penn State, they've shown some warts this season. They're going to be in the thick of the playoff race, but I wasn't all overly impressed with them against USC. They came back and won, but played a pretty tough first half. I don't think they're invincible by any means.
Okay, well, it feels like this one's big. They all are. We'll get them back into action this weekend. We'll talk about that game and more next week, Randy. Until then, enjoy yourself, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good, Mike. Appreciate it.
Good stuff from Randy. I would consider a 7-win season for the Gophers a success, certainly at this point. And that almost certainly means you have to beat Maryland in this game. Not that you couldn't win 3 of your final 4, but when you're talking about Illinois, Wisconsin, Rutgers, and Penn State, that's a tough path. If you only have to win 2 of those 4, you can certainly see them beating Rutgers. You can certainly see them winning either the Illinois or Wisconsin game. You could maybe squint like Randy is and see them beating Penn State at Huntington Bank Stadium. But this is a big one for a successful season. This is not like a season where they're not vying for a spot in the national picture. It's a bit of a rebuilding season, a regrouping season. But if you can get to 7-5, if you think about 7-5, compared to an NFL season, that's a 10-7 season basically in the NFL. That's the same winning percentage as a 10-7 season in the NFL. I think you would say if the Vikings at the start of this year, you might be disappointed if they finish 10-7 now, but at the start of this season, if you said the Vikings are going to finish 10-7, I think you would say that is a successful season for the Vikings. I think 10 wins in any NFL season feels like a relative success, unless you have aspirations of Super Bowl, if you think you're going to be a 13-4 kind of team, things like that. So if the Gophers can get to 7-5, and I get they get some non-conference games, but they played North Carolina like 10 out of their 12 games now, with 9 conference games and the North Carolina game. 10 out of the 12 are, Power 4 conference games. So I think you can just look at their record overall. Yeah, they get to play Nevada. Yeah, they played the FBS team, FCS team, things like that. If they can get to 7-5, though, I think that is a mark of a successful season. They've got to win this one, though, against Maryland to feel like they can realistically get to that point. So that, to me, is what's at stake on Saturday. Gophers presumably will be using 11 guys for the entirety of Saturday's game, but what if they were using 5 fewer players? Let's let Chip Scoggins explain that here in just a minute.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
It is football across Minnesota time. Michael Rand here. Chip Scoggins joins me. Chip writes the Football Across Minnesota feature every week. And this week, Chip, you tell me there is 6-man football in Texas. Tell me more about this story.
Yeah, I was not aware of this until I learned about Demarion Brown, a freshman at Gustavus, who is a running back. And his first college game, he didn't play in the opener, but they took him to UW-Stevens Point for their second game. And they had injuries at running back, so they put him in there, and he promptly rushes for 228 yards and 3 touchdowns, the most by a Gustavus player since 2013. He got put on the D3 football team, which is a national honor for Division III. So it's your first game playing, you get this national honor, which is great until it's even more impressive when you learn that he's used to going against guys half the number of players on the field. He played 6-man football in Kilgore, and I was not familiar with, didn't know there's a such thing. Well, obviously, we have 9-man football here in Minnesota, but in Texas, for their small schools, they have 6-man football, and he played that from Demarion played that from middle school on. When he was 9 or 10, he tried 11-man football briefly and didn't like it, so he played baseball. But so he played 6-man, and so I did some digging on 6-man football and talked to some people down in Texas.
Yeah.
He once scored 15 touchdowns in a game. The scores are like 89.
So do you play on the same size field? Like, who's eligible?
No.
How many eligibles can you have? Okay, explain this.
So the field is 80 yards long.
Okay.
And 40 yards wide.
Okay.
And there's different rules with 6-man. And the most teams have different kinds of formations. The most common one, my understanding, is they'll have a center. Mm-hmm. They'll have 2 wide receivers split out wide on each side. They'll have a quarterback and 2 running backs.
Okay.
Everybody's eligible, even the center. And they have a thing called 2-touch, where you can't just snap it to the quarterback and he runs. It has to touch. 2 people have to, 2 exchanges. They have to exchange it twice. So typically what they do is they might direct snap it to one of the running backs, and he'll pitch it to the quarterback, and then everybody goes out, or he'll pitch it to the quarterback and run. Demarion played a position they called a spread back, where he was kind of out wide, and the quarterback would take the exchange and either toss it to him, lateral it to him, throw it to him. So he touched the ball a lot. He was a 2-way player. So he had a game where he scored 10 rushing touchdowns. He had 2 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions for return for touchdowns, and a kickoff return for a touchdown. Oh my gosh. Which I contacted the governing body for high school sports down there, and they only recognize state records if they happen in championship games in playoffs.
Oh, Okay.
But so 9 rushing touchdowns is in the playoffs. That's the record. So
jeez,
if that had happened in a playoff game, he would have held the state records. But yeah, 10 rushing touchdowns. And he said, when he came here, fall camp was obviously a pretty big adjustment because there's twice as many guys trying to tackle him.
All these guys on the field, yeah.
And he said, it's weird to see a guard or tackle pull the direction you're going because he's just not used to it. So he said he really had to learn to slow down and be patient and allow things to happen because it's 6-man, everything's so fast. There's wide open spaces. You basically make one guy's miss and you're going to a touchdown, right?
Well, it sounds like a pickup game. It sounds like the football I used to play, like the either tackle or two-hand touch. It's like, you get however many people you have, divide them up, and that's how you're going to play. You usually don't get 11 on 11 when you're playing pickup, but you get like somewhere between 4 and 6 people on a team, and then you just go. It kind of sounds like that.
That's it, yeah. And I asked Peter Haugen, Gustavus coach, like how they find him, and there's a little secret sauce into the recruiting. The 6-man that they weren't divulged, but this is the second 6-man player. They had a receiver named Matthew Carrion, excuse me, who played there. He graduated last year, and he was their second most productive receiver last season. He was from Houston, and he played 6-man, so they had some familiarity with it. But Peter said they look for when he was evaluating on film, he was looking at athleticism, ball security, the things that you would ordinarily look for. It's just hard to, you're just not seeing it in 11-man football. And Demarion said, obviously not. He was one of the few teams in East Texas that play 6-man. They used to have to travel 90 minutes, 2 hours, sometimes longer to get the games. So he was either going to join the Texas National Guard or go to trade school, and then got contacted by the assistant coach at Gustavus, and that started the recruitment. And he said, yeah, sure, I'll give this a try. And he followed that up the next week. He had 114 yards and 3 touchdowns against Augsburg. So he leads the team in touchdown run with 6, and he's missed the last 2 games because he's dealing with turf toe. But really, just a incredible find for Gustavus and adjustment by this young man to assimilate to 11-man football after just playing 6-man for 6 years of his life.
Super cool story. Be sure to read that on StarTribune.com. Really quick, Chip, before we go. Game balls. I assume you're not giving a game ball to the WNBA officials, but who else?
They will not get game balls for sure. Game balls. Number 1, Jack Strand, MSU Moorhead quarterback, 35 of 55 for 357 yards and 5 touchdowns, including one with 19 seconds left. Wow. That gave them a victory over Concordia St. Paul. And then how about Kayvon Johnson from Armstrong? Just an unbelievable year for him rushing. He had 34 carries, 309 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Jeez. In a double overtime 1-point win against Andover. Ooh. And Kayvon has 29 touchdowns on the season. He's averaging 9.6 yards per carry. So just
it's almost a first down every time he runs the ball. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then finally, Zach Ryland from Kingsland. He had 17 carries, 366 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And he also caught a 45-yard touchdown pass in a win over Houston. So congratulations to all 3 of those guys. Just terrific performances.
I want to hear more about 6-man next week, but that's good, Chip. Thanks, man. We'll take care.
All right, brother.
Good stuff from Chip. As always, read his full Football Across Minnesota feature that comes out in print and online around the same time that the podcast goes live and the video segment goes live on the Star Tribune's YouTube page. Check out our YouTube page. We've been doing a lot more with the YouTube page lately. A lot of subscribers jumping in, so appreciate that. Keep hitting those likes, subscribes, comments, things like that. I think you'll be pleased with what you find over on the Star Tribune's YouTube page. A lot of sports content over there lately, and to continue. Let us finish with the cooler, the wild, not cool at all, hot. Philip Gustafson, hot. The Gus Bus. He has been red hot. He keeps it going. Only 1 goal allowed again last night, a 5-1 win over defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers in Florida. So I kind of previewed this game just a little bit on Tuesday's show, saying, hey, this is a litmus test kind of game, right? They've been beating up on a lot of kind of mediocre to weak opponents in this, in the first 5 games where they didn't trail at all in regulation. They won 3, lost 2 in overtime. They've been kind of beating up on some bad teams. But, Florida's certainly not a bad team. So, one of the best teams, especially, as we look at last year. So what were they going to do against Florida? Well, they showed us. They showed us they were going to win 5-1, get contributions up and down the lineup, 5 goals by 5 different guys, and it's guys you would expect. Boldy, Eriksson Ek, Johansson, Rossi, and Zuccarello get the 5. Kaprizov didn't score, but he had 2 assists. A +2. He's been feeding Zuccarello a lot so far this year instead of vice versa, and it has been working for the Wild. So a 5-1 win, 4-0-2 on the season now. Still have not trailed in regulation through 6 games now. Is this a team that we have to take seriously now? Like, imagine 2 months ago, if you'd have said the Twins were going to fall apart, the Wolves were going to look clunky in their opener, but the Wild and the Vikings were going to be the teams that were looking the best in terms of the men's sports teams here in this market. I think you would have been surprised by that. I think that was not the narrative 2 months ago. The Wild kind of stuck in neutral. We're thinking, hey, can they get out of their own way? Can they just kind of get through this season until those buyouts are off the books? Instead, a really impressive start for them through 6 games. And same with the Vikings, 5-1 at this point in the season. Vikings, by the way, huge game tomorrow night against the Rams. I was out at the facility on Tuesday, listened in on Aaron Jones and Sam Darnold kind of talking about what's at stake. I don't love the timing of this matchup, but Sam Darnold did make a point that made me think maybe this is a better time to be playing this game than I think. So here was Sam Darnold briefly here talking about the benefit of playing on a short week after a loss.
Like I said before, just kind of owning this game plan, making sure, because again, the beauty of a short week is you don't have a ton of time to think about, narratives or anything like that that's going on around the media, so we just gotta, like I keep saying, we gotta do the best we can to just get our game plan in, own it, and move forward from there.
We'll see if that's true. Lots of big games coming up. Like I said, the Vikings won probably the biggest of the bunch in the mix here locally lately. All of those games are important. Gophers, Maryland on Saturday. Wolves and Wild get a chance to kind of either keep things going or rebound. So it is that time of year. Lots going on. These seasons overlap. Minnesota United soccer playoffs start soon too. It is coming at us fast and furious, but we would not want it any other way. Lavelle E. Neal III and I will tackle some of these subjects on Thursday's show in our three daily delivery debate topics, so look forward to that tomorrow. Look for some of that on YouTube as well. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow.